Hello, everyone. I'm so happy that we are here today for another meeting of yoga readers. For those of you joining us today for the first time, Yoga Readers is an online community that reads yoga books together. We began, our first book is Light on Life by B.K.S. Iyengar. We started reading it on the 1st of May. And by now we have finished, I hope, chapter 6. And we have one more chapter to go. After that, I will announce our next book. But you'll have to wait patiently for that. Let me introduce myself. My name is Agi Wittich. I am a German-Hungarian living in Israel. I am an Iyengar yoga practitioner and Iyengar yoga teacher. I'm also a scholar. I gained my PhD in religions at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I published papers on Iyengar yoga. That's my research focus. And my new book came out in April. So what we'll do today is read from chapter 6 together, and then I'll add my insights. Then we'll break into breakout rooms to have a discussion, and then rejoin to have a conclusion. So I just want to start with a brief summary of what the chapter 6 is about. This is a fascinating chapter, and it's, I think we have waited to get to this layer of understanding, because chapter 6 is dealing with the innermost layer of our being, or in the terms of kosha, it is the most subtle kosha, the most subtle layer of our being. We started from the gross layer of the body, the anandamaya kosha. We went then into the pranamaya kosha of breath or vital energies, and then we moved more in. Now we are at the anandamaya kosha. So in our way, we had manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, and now we are at the core, if you would like, at the anandamaya kosha. And this chapter talks about who we are. Who am I? Who are you? In the deepest way that one can ask this question. So this is truly, in a way, a philosophical chapter, but I say in a way because it is also very, very practical, as we've seen during the whole book. It's not that it's just a book about philosophy. This is not light on yoga's philosophy. This is light on life. So B.K.S. Iyengar, in a wonderful way, intertwines the philosophy of yoga and the day-to-day practice and life that one has as a yogi or a person who pursues a yogic life. And I would ask, and this is also, this is in the chapter, why we don't know who we are. What are the obstacles? And Iyengar tells us about 5 obstacles that we have that are part of us being human. There are 5 afflictions or kleshas that impede spiritual progress, and they are ignorance, avidya, the fact that we don't know our true self, pride, asmita, attachment, raga, aversion, dvesha, and then, of course, fear of death, abhinivesha, which unfortunately I've been feeling more and more in the last about year or 9 months, let's say. So these 5 afflictions are the ones that are hindering our ability to realize who we truly are. And then the cure, or the path to overcome them or to deal with them in order to realize who we really are, is yoga. And in yoga, Iyengar points to meditation as being the main road that leads us into the deepest understanding of who we are. And by meditation, we already know, because we read the previous chapters, he does not mean just sitting in meditation. So meditation is the observation, is the investigation, is the understanding of the way we think and the way we act. And of course, meditation in movement could be gained through asana practice as well, but it's also about living a moral kind of life. So let's dive into reading. And as we usually do, I highlighted some paragraphs for us to read, because we cannot read 50 pages in 1 hour and then understand them as well and discuss them as well. So we'll just read a few paragraphs, and whoever is willing to read will just open the mic and read. So we start in the beginning of chapter 6, Bliss, the divine body, Ananda.
Happy to read if you would like.
Yes, please.
Okay. Our inward journey has now taken us to the innermost core of our being, to the bliss body or divine body, anandamaya kosha, that resides within us all, where our soul lives and where we can glimpse the universal oneness that embraces us all. This vision of our divinity forces us to return once again to the nature of our humanity. Before we can understand the universal soul, we must understand our own, and before we understand our soul, we must explore all that eclipses our true selves, especially the wily I that takes on 1,000 disguises to distract us. Who am I is a fundamental question that has always existed in people's minds. Traditionally, it might have been answered to some extent by reference to one's role or primary function in society. I'm a priest, a warrior, a merchant, a servant, a carpenter, a wife, a mother. But the deeper implications of the question have always been present. In any case, no one is a mother or businessman or school teacher all the time, all their lives. These are temporary states. Even if you say, I'm a man or a woman, it is incomplete. Formerly, you were a child, and besides, does sexual identity have any importance when you're asleep? What we are really saying is, I am I, which is not very helpful. By I, we are referring to that bit of us that seems to be at the center of our perceptions, our actions, our feelings, our thoughts, and our memories. It is often called the ego-based self or egoic self. But if all we can say is I am I, and everyone else is saying the same thing, then logically we must all be the same, which visibly and palpably we are not. So in order to explain our differences and define this I, self, further, we tack on attributes and characteristics that qualify and exemplify the I in some way. A rich man might feel that I and my possessions gives a fair indication. A politician, I and my power. A chronic invalid, I and my sickness. An athlete, I and my body. A film star, I and my beauty. A professor, I and my brain. Or a bad-tempered, dissatisfied person, I and my anger. Adding a ragbag of attributes to our I self is not only how we generally see ourselves, but how we see and describe others. The important point is that all these qualities we list are external to the I. In other words, the I identifies itself by conjoining with its surroundings. Clearly, I leapfrogged one answer to the who am I question. It is, I am a human being. For this to be of value, one has to ask the follow-up question, what then is a human being? This is exactly what yoga does. The starting point of yogic inquiry, the basic question underpinning all yogic practice is simply, what are we? Even the asana itself is an inquiry, asking in each asana, who am I? Through the asana, the practitioner throws out all the extraneous parts until only the soul is left. The final correct asana is a true expression of, I am that is God. This expression is felt only when one approaches and performs asana within the framework of physical prowess, sakti, intellectual skillfulness, yukti, and devotion and worshipfulness, bhakti, in each asana. Let us therefore sift through everything, says yoga, every component of a human being that we can find and identify. Our bodies, breath, energy, sickness and health, brain and anger, and pride in our power and possessions. Above all, yoga says, let us examine this mysterious I, ever present and conscious of itself, but invisible in the mirror or on any photograph.
There's one bit more in next 190.
When we first asked the question, who am I? What we were truly hoping for was to discover an enduring identity beyond role or function or attribute, a real self, real in the sense that it is not menaced by the mortality of the flesh, but that it is permanent and unchanging. That is why yoga examines the totality of being, every layer of existence from body inward, sorting, testing, observing, experimenting, dissecting, and classifying until a full blueprint of the human being is built up. The ancient yogis and philosopher saints systematically did this until they found the light that they were looking for, the eternal, unchanging self, the part of us that answers once and for all the original, inevitable question, who am I? Their gift to us lies in the knowledge and techniques and maps of their search that they bequeath to us, so that we too can each answer our own question, since it is certain no one else can answer it for us. In this chapter, we will explore the nature of this eternal, unchanging self. But before we can, we must discover the 5 afflictions that eclipse our comprehension and cause so much of our suffering. The ancient yogis tried to work out a plan by which human evolution, both individually and collectively, could progress. In doing so, the ancient sages naturally asked themselves the questions, what is making things go wrong? Why, in spite of our best intentions, does something always send things awry? Are we programmed forever to sabotage our own aspirations? Their inquiry led them to the 5 afflictions that we all experience.
Thank you. Yeah, before going into that, I thought I would share something with you. I didn't plan this, but now it kind of came up. About 10 years ago, I had a very severe car accident, and because of it, I had a severe brain concussion and then a post-brain concussion syndrome, which basically meant that I was very confused and I had trouble walking and moving, and eventually I had trouble practicing and teaching. And once I got diagnosed, I was told I should not teach or practice, and I could not even read. And when it became worse, I couldn't speak full sentences. And I was then also a scholar and a yoga practitioner and a yoga teacher. But who am I if I cannot practice? Who am I if I cannot teach? And who am I if I cannot think clearly, if I cannot articulate my thoughts? Who am I in this blur? And I was lying in bed and I was in this blur, I was in this fog, and these questions kept on coming. But there I was still there in bed. I was still breathing. My body was still there. My mind was still thinking. And these questions came up again and again. And I think that it comes up in different parts in our lives, these questions of who am I? We call it an identity crisis that happens to new mothers as well, and in different parts in our lives, when we face loss, when we have a big change in our lives, and we ask ourselves these questions, and they are quite disturbing, these questions. And we are very calm when we think that we know who we are, and we are quite disturbed when we don't know who we are, or when someone asks us again and again who we are. So I just want to warn all of you that we're going into uncomfortable fields when we come into these questions. It's one thing to theoretically talk about them, but when you're actually asking yourself and when you are undermining what you think of who you are, of your self-perception, that can be quite unsettling. So just prepare yourself. It's not that talking about fear of death is such a fun thing to do, but these questions they go very deep. And I think that every time we kind of feel we know who we are, that's the time when the guru would come and ask us, so who are you? Who are you really? And there are various stories in the Upanishads, these ancient Sanskrit texts, that talk about who we really are. There is this famous story about the king of demons and the king of gods. that went to the creator of the world, Prajapati, and they asked him to teach them who they are, who are they really, who they really are. So the innermost knowledge of the self. And he gave both of them an answer. He told them, go and look at your reflection in the water, and whatever you see is your true self. And it's a very long story, but I'll make it short. The demon king looked into the water, saw his own reflection, and was very pleased. And he went back to the demon kingdom and told everyone, now I have the knowledge from the creator of the world, and I know the true self. The true self is our outer appearance. And he was very handsome. He's described having all this jewelry, and all the demons were very happy with this answer. But then the king of the gods, Indra, he was not satisfied by this, and he said, well, the outer appearance can change, and the true self cannot. And he stays for many more years, 108 years actually, and every period of time, Prajapati gives him another answer and another answer and another answer, and finally, after 108 years, he gives him the final answer of who the real self is. And there is a importance, of course, for the time period. He stays at the guru's place. And there is importance for all the wrong answers the teacher gives, because giving the wrong answer also makes the student want more the answer. And another story that comes to mind is a young boy named Shvetaketu that goes to school, and he studies all the knowledge a Brahmin boy should know. And when he comes home, he's described as like his head is bloated with knowledge. And his father sees him and he sees his bloatedness, and he tells him, do you know the one thing that everyone should know, the true self? And the answer is, I don't know, teach me. And that story tells us about different layers of knowledge, that we can know something, but if we want to go deeper into the innermost self, into the deepest knowledge of who we really are, of our existence, we have to transcend something. And I think that correlates with this uncomfortableness that I discussed before, that we really have to be ready. So there is this price to pay, to feel ignorant, to feel uncertain. There is the need to question whatever we know. So now let's go into the kleshas. Into the next bit that we're going to read, the things that make us not know who we truly are.
The five afflictions. The afflictions are a particular pattern of disturbance to the human consciousness, as universal and prevalent as fruit flies to healthy apples. Our state of mind at any given moment is a wave pattern. It is incredibly complex. It is constantly modified by outside stimuli, an advertisement, an unkind word, a smile from a friend. Rising thoughts from the unconscious and memory confuse it further, a wish, a regret. But there are more enduring patterns of interference that I shall explain now. They are as inbuilt in us as fruit flies are in the life cycle of apples. They are called the polluting fluctuations of consciousness, or afflictions, Klesas. They corrupt our lives and vitiate our best intentions to ripen as a person. What don't we know when we are ignorant? The answer is this. You don't know what is real and what is not real. You don't know what is enduring and what is perishable. You don't know who you are and who you are not. Your whole world is upside down because you take the artifacts in your living room to be more real than the unity that connects us all, more real than the relations and obligations that unite us all. Perceiving the links and associations that bind the cosmos in a seamless whole is the object of yoga's journey of discovery. You could put it this way. All mankind lives unwittingly within the truth of yoga. Yoga is one. No one escapes the mechanism of, as you sow, so shall you reap. Yet we deny the totality of our vision. We find ourselves in the position of having to portion it up, to compartmentalize it, to cherry pick what suits us and reject what does not. Why? It is because we all misapprehend reality. Not just partially, but totally. Only the supreme renunciate, Bhaktan, is capable with one peerless gesture of surrender, of turning the universe inside out and outside in. We are like a man who has put his shirt on inside out and back to front. The only way he can rectify his error is to take it off, work out how it should be, and start again. Through yoga, we take off the shirt of our ignorance, study it, and put it back on correctly as a shirt of knowledge. To do this, we examine, like the man turning out the body and each sleeve of his shirt separately, each petal of yoga as if it were separate. Just as man knows that the shirt is one, but has many designs, we should not forget that yoga is only one. Ignorance, avidya, prevents us from seeing the truth. What does not endure is the egoic self, me. The undiscovered soul endures the misperception that I am me. It is this egoic me that does not want to die. This impersonation of soul by ego is at the base of all human woes, and this is the root of avidya, ignorance or nescience. Ignorance is, in its essence, taking the day-to-day self we know for the immortal self, the true self or soul. If you combine that with the fifth affliction, which is fear of death and clinging to life, it means that a great deal of human activity throughout all ages is an attempt to perpetuate the existence of the ego itself through name, fame, wealth, glory, or achievement. Yet the soul endures, and the known ego will perish, as does its outward sheath, the body. This is mankind's horrid predicament, that what he believes himself to be, his ego and attributes, are perishable, whereas what man merely senses himself to be, transcendent consciousness and soul, will endure.
Can you read more, or should someone else?
And I'm okay. I cannot stress sufficiently that the five afflictions are interwoven into the fiber of all our beings. They are not like defects such as laziness or greed, which we may or may not have. They are wave patterns of interference that stem from our glorious individuality, biological, psychological, and spiritual. They are the fundamental misapprehension of the relationship that the part, our individual selves, has in relationship to the whole, nature and divinity. Without a clear appreciation of what we receive from the whole and what we contribute back to the well-being of the whole, we are left howling in the wilderness. No lovers, servants, riches, cars, houses, or public acclaim can salve the wound of a dysfunctional relationship with our origin. The first two afflictions, ignorance, not knowing, and pride, are considered to be wave patterns of interference operating at an intellectual level. The next two, attachment, raga, and aversion, dvesa, influence us more at an emotional level. We must be careful with language here. When we say, I am very attached to my wife, we mean, I love her. So it is only a manner of speaking. What raga really means is obsessive or perverted love, a conflation of the egoic self with the object of one's attachment. The correct attitude to our possessions is gratitude, not ownership. Toward our car, we should feel gratitude that it conveys us safely and allows us to see places we would not otherwise have seen. I am grateful to the table I am writing on. It makes this book possible. Aversion, dvesa, is the opposite side of attachment. It is a repulsion that leads to enmity and hate, like the same poles of two magnets pushing away from each other. Again, it is based on superficialities. My essence cannot hate your essence because they are the same. I may deplore your behavior, but it is a nonsense to deduce that therefore I hate you. If I on occasion have deplored my own behavior, does that mean I should hate my own soul, hate the divinity within? Of course not. I should correct my behavior.
I can continue. The final wave pattern or affliction that influence our lives is experienced at an instinctual level. At an instinctual level, it makes good sense, as we are all animals trying to stay alive. It is when we upgrade the natural survival mechanism to inappropriate levels that trouble arises. It is called fear of death or clinging to life, abhinivesha. Naturally, when you are sick, your biological body clings to life. It is supposed to. This is the struggle for existence, the reasonable desire to prolong the life of the vehicle of the soul. After all, it is not like a car. You cannot just buy another one. You have to keep your body as healthy as possible on the spiritual path. We all identified with our bodies. This is inevitable. If an elephant charges towards us as we cross the road, we do not cry, "My God, my ego will be crushed." At that moment, we are bodies which jump out of the way. This is largely true when we are ill. Good health banishes body identifications to a degree nothing else can. We accept that, in the long run, we are not our bodies. Body perishes. We hope we will not, but you cannot tell that to pain. We may note that body is not our enduring identity, but that knowledge is the orational. In health, we forget our bodies. In sickness, we cannot. How much simpler life would be if this were the other way around. In relation to the body, this means that we are not our body in any permanent sense, but for all practical purposes, we are our bodies because they are the vehicles through which we perceive and can discover our immortality. This is why yoga begins with the body. Okay, this was quite long, but I felt that we cannot leave these bits out because it just explains the dveshas, which are crucial to understand in this chapter. So each wave pattern of thought is just part of us. We cannot change it. It's not that we are more inclined to fear of death or to attachment, but it's just something that we need to know and then work through it. How can we beat the fear of death? Through meditation, through investigation, through observation, through questioning of what we know, and hopefully then feeling the blissful state of samadhi. So we are now jumping into, this is page 200. The goal can be reached. That's the more optimistic part. Someone wants to read?
The goal can be reached. Meditation is the gateway to ending the 5 afflictions. Meditation is bringing the complex mind to a state of simplicity and innocence, but without ignorance. Meditation comes when ego is vanquished. As the 7th petal of yoga, it can be reached by progressing through all other stages of yoga practice. But the 8th petal, samadhi, comes as the fruit of meditation. It arrives by the grace of God. It cannot be forced. Samadhi is the state in which the aspirant becomes one with the object of meditation, the supreme soul pervading the universe, where there is a feeling of unutterable joy and peace. In the past chapter, we explored the point at which the totality of being was experienced, from core to periphery, an expansive creative movement that revealed the individual self, the Jivatman. The focus of this chapter, the blissful sheath,
Anandamaya.
anandamaya kosha, is the surrender and fusion of the individual self in the ocean of being. It is not merely the transcendence of ego, but the dissolution of self as we know it, a hiatus in the ongoing experience of self. It brings us to the original illusion, avidya, of separation between creator and created. It is truth incarnate. It is truth and spirit. It is the divine marriage of nature and the universal soul. It is existential and supra-existential bliss, total absorption in origin and end. It is to be born to the eternal. For most of us, now and throughout past history, Samadhi remains theoretical, yet yoga shows the way to this lofty peak. For the vast majority of readers, it is envisageable only as a heavenly landscape of beatitude that we conjure up through imagination. Yet do not think for a second that I am saying that it is not real or that you cannot reach it. The ultimate freedom is not beyond your grasp. Examine your imagination. Are you daydreaming of the future or trying to remember the face of a long-lost love whose features have melted in the mists of time? It is the latter. And does not the longing you feel spring from the core of your being? It is not a desire for an end to duality, for a oneness that is not achieved through complementarity, but a oneness that exists because there is no other. To discover the individual soul, you need inspiration, the creative force of breathing in. To discover the cosmic soul, you need the courage to release, to breathe out, to make the ultimate surrender. Do not be discouraged. The divine will impels humankind to this end. Hold the soul, Atman, not just the breath. There is a space between surrender and acceptance. You surrender to the Lord, and the Lord accepts your surrender. And to accept, time and space are needed. That is retention, kumbhaka.
Thank you. There is a lot to say about kumbhaka and what happens in that moment, but let's keep that for perhaps the next session. It's a very mystical moment that he speaks of. Maybe we'll read it also today regarding Samadhi. So here he says that meditation leads us to a place that is difficult to describe in words, but we can reach it. It's close to us. It's feasible. And there is a bit that we won't read, but I encourage you, if you haven't yet, between pages 211 and 214, he gives a beautiful example or a metaphor of a person who, a man without means, who is at a dead end in his work. He's anxious, tense, and frustrated, and he often fights with his wife and children. So in the evening, he chooses to drink and gamble, and this makes him even more poor, and he works worse in his job, and then he gets fired, and it's a very bad loop. And then Iyengar says, what if he changes something? What happens if he invests his evenings in evening studies, and he learns to improve his skills? Then he learns how to improve his relationship with his family. Over time, he gets a good job, and his boss appreciates his skills. His wife appreciates his social skills, and slowly, his life gets better. The atmosphere at home is more pleasant. He gets promoted, and then he gets financial well-being. So Iyengar explains how this is an example of perseverance courage, learning, having intellectual skills, and also devotion, which is what he just touched upon in the bit we read. And these are hints of how he suggests that we should read, but he elaborates on that in the next chapter. So now we'll just jump into page 214, which directly speaks about Samadhi. We have time for two more short bits to read. Here it is.
I can read if no one else wants to.
Yes, please.
In effect, what I have just said is that mind is a bottomless pit, like a black hole. Stop trying to fill it, as it cannot be filled. Go beyond the bottomless pit to realize the soul. For the beginner, Samadhi is an alluring subject, but there are reasons not to get fixated on it. The beginner can only conceive of Samadhi as a glorification of the self he knows. In the same way, every beginner who picks up a tennis racket dreams of winning Wimbledon or the US Open. Often, beginners in yoga indulge in fantasies of an easy Samadhi, and there are those who are only too ready to take advantage of their gullibility. Samadhi has to come on its own. It is inexpressible. You cannot even ask someone who has been in meditation, did you meditate for 2 hours? How could he know? It is a state outside time. Meditation is going from the known to the unknown, and then coming back to the known. It is impossible to say I'm going to meditate, or I meditated for 2 hours. If we know it lasted 2 hours, we were in the self, not in the infinite, where time in the linear sense no longer exists. This holds true even more of Samadhi. Nobody can say, I am in Samadhi. One cannot talk or communicate. Samadhi is an experience where the existence of I disappears. Explanation can come only through the presence of I, so Samadhi cannot be explained. We are now in the innermost sheath or casual body where we can see that we are divine, and the self with a small s is replaced by the big S, self, as we truly understand at the core of our being that our individual soul is part of the universal soul. It is said that the meaning of life becomes apparent only in the face of death. At this point, in practice, the ego dissolves, or rather it gives up its impersonation of the true self. This is the culmination of yoga, samadhi, blissful absorption, the final freedom whereby the individual soul merges in the ocean of being. All this time we have identified ourselves with our bodies, our organs, our senses, our intelligence, and our ego. But here we are totally with the soul. In meditation, consciousness faces the soul itself. Samadhi is seeing the soul face to face. It is not a passive state. It is a dynamic one in which the consciousness remains in a state of equilibrium in all circumstances. The disturbances of the mind and emotions fade away, and we are able to see true reality. Our consciousness, clear of thoughts and emotions, becomes transparent. It becomes crystal clear as both memory and intelligence are cleansed. As a flawless crystal reflects any color without any blurring or admixture, our consciousness, when it is pure and untainted by disturbances, reflects the object of thought clearly.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a chapter which is it's hard to stop reading it, but it's also worth stop reading it because so many questions arise. Later in this bit, he mentions Ramakrishna, who is a Bengali yogi whose life story is quite interesting, how he got enlightened by witnessing the goddess Kali dancing in a temple in Bengal. It's worth reading, of course. But we stop here because he started explaining Samadhi, and perhaps we are getting a bit lost in just he's describing a mental state which is very difficult to describe, but that can be attained if we meditate and if we investigate and if we constantly ask and look within and try to understand who we really are. And this is the last bit that I wanted us to read. It's in page 223. And it's about Iyengar assuring us that we can actually reach it by practicing what we already practice, by the practice of asana as well. So this is the last bit for today. Who is quick enough to open the mic and read?
I can assure you that everyone seeks Samadhi, and most of us seek shortcuts to get there. Those of you modestly struggling to join your hands behind your back as well as round your knee, after several years of practice of twistings, may well exclaim, what can Samadhi possibly have to do with me? Well, for a start, from early chapters, you will have understood that penetration is possible in any asana that you can perform with reasonable proficiency. You may well be going further inside yourself with a few good asanas you can do rather than the one next to you in class who can do 40 with apparent ease. That does not mean we should not strive continually to extend our range. A musical composer may not play every instrument in the orchestra perfectly, but if he wants to write a symphony, he must get to grips with the potential of each one. He must find what it can contribute to the whole, from the French horn to the humble triangle. We have a triangle pose in yoga, Trikonasana, and I assure you that when I lost everything in my physical practice in 1979 due to a severe accident, relearning Trikonasana from the soles of my feet up made me a master of teaching it in a way I never was before. The final integration of the sheaths of being at last brings access to the knowledge of the soul to join that of the heart and body. Samadhi is only a state where you experience the absorption of the body, mind, and soul as a single unit. But from Samadhi, we have to reach a higher and subtler state called
Kaivalya.
Kaivalya, eternal emancipation or freedom in action. I said that in Samadhi you are, but cannot do. What is the condition following Samadhi in which we can do again, but not as before, acting out of diversity and apparent choice? Can I act out of an undivided self? Can my conscious mind surrender to that which is ever stable and steady? Samadhi, if it was genuine, should have revealed a human intelligence that uncovers the true reality of interconnectivity between people that stems from wisdom as opposed to the power to control people in a way that comes simply from mental knowledge. The person who has that wisdom and their interactions with the world are based on a different understanding, one founded in compassion and the friendship of both perceived and realized unity.
Thank you. We'll stop here. This is actually touching upon a very big discussion within Hindu philosophy about what happens to the person after Samadhi. Iyengar does not take us there, but there is a question of if a person reached Samadhi, the final goal, can he talk? Can he act? Can he teach others? Is it a one-way ticket? Does it mean that you still have your body? And if so, what do you do with this duality of having a body and being in the spiritual realm and the ultimate goal? Of course, there is this idea of you can go there and come back, like you go to sleep and you wake up, you go into a deep state of Samadhi and you wake up. Then there are different layers of Samadhi, which are already explained in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in the first pada. So it's a vast discussion about what happens to a person once he gains Samadhi. But here Iyengar explains to us that it can be reached, and we have a lot to gain by just walking the path towards that goal and having that goal in mind. Otherwise, we get confused, like the demon god, the king of demons, that he got his answer and then he went in the wrong path. So what we'll do now, as we usually do, we'll divide into groups, smaller groups, and have 3 questions for discussion. The first is, what is the ignorance that Iyengar talks about in the chapter, and how can the practice of yoga help us overcome it? Second question, how can practicing yoga help us overcome the fear of death? And the third question, have you experienced in your practice a moment of deep connection to something that resembles the deepest veil of your being? You can answer from your own experience, or you can base your answer on whatever Iyengar provided in the chapter. So see you in hello, welcome back from a wonderful discussion. I heard part of each group. Some of you wished you had more time, I know. Is there anything someone wants to share with the rest of the group, something that came up that you feel the need to share, or a question that you want to ask?
I would like to register for the next time you do the same book, because I need more. So count me in.
Okay.
There's so much. There's so much. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and you said it's very abstract, understanding that we are not who we think we are, who we feel we are. We are so much identified with this ignorant self that it's very hard to accept, right? The thing is that in our day-to-day life, we are not disturbed by it. We don't even think about it. And this is the light on life that B.K.S. Iyengar gives us. This is just start thinking about it. Just have the question in mind. And then sometimes we get these glimpses through practice, through meditation. And maybe just when you stir your morning tea, you have that moment of, oh, who am I? Was I there while I was sleeping? So I don't know when that moment of aha will come, but it can come at any moment. And tradition says it comes when you are in deep meditation, but that deep meditation can be whenever. And he also says that when you wake up in the morning, there is this moment where you're not yet identified with the false self. And that moment when you're not there yet. Or sleep helps us understand that we exist even when we are not aware. We exist even when there is not this I amness, this asmita inside of us. And these moments, if we acknowledge them, and if we think about the questions of who we are and these different layers of being, then maybe we can get closer to understanding who we are. And that can free us from fear of death. That can free us from disturbing thoughts, other disturbing thoughts and fears. Okay, so our next, yes, Pragya?
Yeah, I have just quick question. The story that you were talking about, can we get the name of those stories? I am just curious to know about those stories as well.
Which stories?
I
the
think
man?
the Dhoomketu, I think, I don't remember exactly.
Shveta Ketu.
Shweta Ketu, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And the other one is Virochana and Indra when they go and visit Prajapati.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I need to know when is the next meeting, because I get confused.
Yeah, I'll send you very shortly the next meeting. It will be in about 3 weeks. I have a retreat here in Israel in 2 weekends, so it will have to be afterwards. And that will be our concluding chapter. I hope that many will attend. And I have plans about our next book that I can share with you very briefly. Like Pragya just asked about references to stories, I'm thinking about having like a newsletter, or maybe have a more lively Facebook group where before we meet, I can share with you these stories and perhaps put on some links, or have a focus on asanas when they are described in the chapter or in the parts that we are reading, and maybe that can kind of keep us more connected between chapters, between Zoom sessions, let's say. So having more things to nourish our community between Zoom sessions. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like the idea. And do you have any, like, what book we are planning to do next? I'm just thinking I can buy that book as well.
Yeah, it will come. You can
Okay.
stay curious for now, but
It's a
you'll have
surprise.
enough
She's not
time to get
telling.
it.
She's not telling. It's a surprise. I know.
I will tell you that in Israel, the book was out of print, and I got in touch with the publishing house, and they republished it in Hebrew just for our reading community,
Yeah.
which is a huge thing. Having a book republished in
It's
Israel, the book of B.K.S. Iyengar, I'm very happy about that. But the book is available in English and on Amazon and on different platforms, so you won't have a problem getting it. It's a very popular book.
Is it this one?
Is a Tree of
Well,
Yoga? I was just thinking about that same one.
you have to keep on thinking and guessing.
Or call me because I know.
Okay, so thank you all very much.
Yes,
Thank you,
And
Ag.
see
Thank
you
you,
shortly.
Aggie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Thank you.